Automation does not remove expense. It converts flexibility into rigidity, and rigidity behaves differently under stress. Automation is rarely cost destruction, it is cost migration. Consider a mid-sized insurer that automated its claims processing division. Payroll fell 18% within 12 months. The savings were celebrated. Earnings guidance improved. The stock rose. But within the same period, infrastructure commitments increased 26%. Cloud capacity was locked into multi-year agreements. Model retraining teams were hired. Compliance logging expanded. Cybersecurity insurance premiums rose. What left the wage column reappeared in depreciation schedules, vendor contracts, and risk reserves. The income statement looked leaner. The capital structure became heavier. Most firms describe automation as expense reduction. Payroll declines, tasks disappear, efficiency improves. The narrative appears clean. But in capital terms, automation alters the composition of cost before it alters the magnitude of cost. Labor expense may fall, yet infrastructure expense expands. Human supervision may narrow, yet validation layers multiply. Operational variability may decline, yet fixed capital intensity increases. What disappears from the wage line frequently reappears in depreciation schedules, vendor contracts, compute commitments, integration overhead, and structural risk reserves. Automation shifts cost from elasticity to commitment. In traditional operating models, labor behaves as a semi-variable expense. Headcount adjusts over time. Compensation scales with activity. Error remains local. When demand contracts, payroll can eventually be reduced. When demand expands, hiring can follow. Automation converts portions of that variable cost into structural exposure. Compute infrastructure, software licensing, model hosting, cybersecurity layers, redundancy architecture, and vendor dependency introduce rigidity. The income statement appears leaner. The balance sheet becomes heavier. Flexibility does not disappear. It is reallocated. This is the core miscalculation in automation strategy. Executives observe declining payroll and assume declining risk. But wage elasticity has often been exchanged for infrastructure dependency. The organization may look lighter operationally while becoming heavier structurally. Infrastructure behaves differently under stress. When labor absorbs volatility, adjustment occurs through hours, hiring freezes, turnover, or gradual compensation moderation. When infrastructure absorbs volatility, adjustment requires contract renegotiation, asset impairment, or stranded capital recognition. One is operational friction. The other is capital repricing. Automation therefore reshapes not only expense levels, but volatility surfaces. Integration cost illustrates this dynamic clearly. Early automation initiatives appear inexpensive. A workflow is automated. A model is deployed. A reporting function is streamlined. Payroll impact is visible. Yet beneath the surface, integration layers expand. Data cleaning, model monitoring, retraining cycles, compliance logging, performance auditing, API governance, and security architecture. These are not transitional expenses. They are recurring structural commitments. Human adaptability becomes engineered oversight. As automation scales, cost migrates upward into architecture. Engineering headcount replaces clerical headcount. Vendor governance replaces supervisor management. Compute forecasting replaces shift scheduling. The organization contracts in routine labor and expands in structural complexity. The firm looks smaller in headcount yet larger in capital depth. This is cost reallocation in motion. It is also why automation can increase total cost in early phases. Firms eliminate labor before scale justifies infrastructure intensity. They underestimate integration burden. They misprice compute volatility. They discover that automated systems require supervision, exception management, and performance assurance. Automation creates a new form of entropy. We call it model rot. A human employee is a self-updating sensor. An algorithm is a frozen snapshot of a past reality. The moment a model is deployed, the world begins to move away from it. Customer behavior shifts. Regulation evolves. Edge cases multiply. Data distributions drift. Unlike a human worker who adapts incrementally at marginal cost, a deployed model decays silently. To prevent that decay, firms must pay a maintenance tax. Retraining cycles, fine-tuning, data labeling, validation loops, performance benchmarking, infrastructure recalibration. What was presented as efficiency becomes a subscription to your own prior assumptions. In 2026, firms that set and forgot their automation are discovering digital rust. Margins erode not because labor returned, but because maintenance debt accumulated. Compute entropy compounds. The cost line they believed was stable re-emerges as recurring model rehabilitation. The wage line declines. The systems line rises. And the most invisible migration is the governance tax. For every dollar saved on a junior clerk, firms increasingly spend more to prove that the automated system is compliant, unbiased, and defensible. Automation does not eliminate accountability, it amplifies documentation. The work shifts from doing to proving. The archive of the decision becomes more expensive than the decision itself. Logging systems expand, audit trails deepen, compliance architects replace supervisors. You trade operational execution for evidentiary infrastructure. The firm must now demonstrate that the machine is not hallucinating, not discriminating, not mispricing risk. Cost has not vanished. It has changed form. Long-term advantage emerges only if output scales faster than structural capital deepens. Automation must create operating leverage rather than merely shift expense categories. If revenue remains flat while infrastructure rigidity increases, margin compression follows. The firm becomes structurally heavier without becoming economically faster. Cost reallocation also reshapes competitive dynamics. When firms automate simultaneously, labor expense compresses across the industry. Yet infrastructure providers consolidate pricing power upstream. Compute vendors capture rent. Platform providers accumulate margin. Cost that disappeared from payroll reappears as subscription, hosting, or API dependency. When you replace a department with an API, you have not eliminated cost. You have introduced a silent partner into your boardroom. You are now a tenant on someone else's silicon. Employee loyalty has been exchanged for vendor captivity. If the provider raises pricing by 10%, your margin absorbs the shock. There is no labor buffer to negotiate downward. Wages are elastic. Platform rent is not. The automated firm becomes structurally dependent on upstream pricing. Discipline it does not control. This is the tenant-farmer model of modern corporate strategy. Firms cultivate revenue on land they do not own. The harvest scales. So does the rent. The critical question is not whether cost declines. It is whether flexibility survives the transition. In capital-intensive sectors, automation converts distributed labor expense into concentrated infrastructure expense. This strengthens economies of scale for large firms and raises barriers for smaller entrants. The fixed cost base becomes both moat and burden. During expansion, scale compounds advantage. During contraction, rigidity amplifies fragility. Labor is a breathing expense. In a downturn, firms reduce bonuses, freeze hiring, cut discretionary programs. Infrastructure does not breathe. Cloud commitments persist. GPU depreciation continues. Software licenses renew. Data center leases do not negotiate with macro volatility. The automated firm can resemble a concrete ship. It is stable in calm water. But when the first wave of contraction arrives, it does not bend. It snaps. The lean firm of one cycle becomes the brittle firm of the next. Efficiency, when misunderstood, is often fragility in disguise. There is also a timing asymmetry embedded in cost migration. Labor reduction produces immediate visible savings. Infrastructure amortization stretches across years. Risk accumulation remains latent until volatility materializes. By the time capital rigidity becomes visible, strategic flexibility has already narrowed. Automation must therefore be evaluated as a capital allocation decision, not a staffing initiative. The financial lens is straightforward. Does automation convert variable expense into fixed exposure? Does it increase dependency concentration? Does it create maintenance debt that compounds over time? Does it enhance operating leverage at a rate that exceeds the growth in structural rigidity? If the answer is no, automation is not efficiency. It is structural reweighting. Artificial intelligence does not simplify the firm. It restructures its cost architecture. And in competitive markets, the firms that understand where rigidity accumulates and how flexibility erodes are the firms that compound advantage while others compound exposure. This is AI economics, the business physics of artificial intelligence.